Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Macon Campbell and this is maconSTUFF. So guys, part 14, and we're finally going to get to taking out these bellows. For some reason, I don't know why, I've been very much looking forward to this part. So let's jump right into it. So this whole unit at the bottom here are the bellows. This over here is the base to which the reed pan is attached. I'm probably going to have to take this whole thing out as one piece. To do that, I'm just going to have to loosen these blocks over here, loosen the screws that are holding it to the frame. Another thing I need to remember is the straps for the treadles are also attached to the front of the bellows, so I'm going to have to loosen those before I take them out. I know at some point that this base is going to have to be removed from here, and there's a little something that I'm worried about in terms of that. As you can see on the edges of here are 4 large flathead screws, which I imagine are the original screws that were in here. But the problem that I noticed is that all over the rest of the part here are nails that have been driven in here. Now these look like nails that someone added at a later stage, and if you look at the inside there is a lot of glue in here as well. All of that glue coupled with all of these nails that look fairly long means that it is probably going to be quite a bit of a hassle getting these two pieces separated, but that is something that's going to have to be done. So initially I'm just going to try and take it out all together as one unit, and then I'll tackle that problem later. But first I'm going to have to loosen the straps from the treadles so that when I pull this out it doesn't get caught up. So let's do it. Okay, so these are the straps. They are connected on the one side over here to the treadle with just a block of wood which has screws driven in them. They go through these rollers at the top, and then they are screwed into the front part of the bellows. So when you step on them, they pull the bellows back. I'm going to leave the connection on the bellows themselves. I'm just going to loosen these connections over here so that when I pull the bellows out I can just pull the whole strap along with it. While I'm at it, I'm just going to take these off as well. These just seem to be rounded over brackets to prevent too much chafing when you're pressing down on these treadles. Okay, I think it's going to be a good idea if I remove these springs too, because I don't want anything popping when I take these out. It doesn't look like they're fastened at all. They're just sticking into little divots into the wood here, and I suspect the same on this side. So let's see if I can pop it out. There we go. One spring. There's another one on this side. There we go. So let's turn it around, see if we can get this out. Okay, so I'm going to have to figure out a way to get this top off here, because I'm going to need to get that off in order to work on the rest of the bellows. I took this really dull chisel and I tried to drive it in here lightly, but it seems like this thing is very stuck. You may remember all the nails that I mentioned that are driven in here that keep this thing together. As I said, there is glue here. It does seem to be hide glue, so I should be able to get that loose with a bit of water, but I don't know how much of this is being held on by the glue and how much is being held on by the nails. But prying this off with the nails in place is most probably not going to be a good idea, so I'm going to see what I can do about trying to pry these nails out. I'll perhaps get a chisel or a screwdriver and try and lift them up a bit so I can get hold of them with a pair of pliers or something and see if I can pull them that way. Don't know if that's going to work, but I'm going to give it a shot. Okay, so it doesn't look great, but I don't see myself having any other choice. Once I've sanded this piece down, I'll just fill whatever dents I made here with some wood filler or something. As you can see, this thing is still fairly stuck on there, so the only thing bonding it now is the glue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some warm water and a brush, and I'm going to brush as much warm water as I dare to inside this glue joint, turn it upside down and do the same around the base, and I'll leave it to stand for a while and hopefully that will loosen the glue. So let me give that a try. Okay, that's about as much water as I dare to put on here. I don't want to damage the wood any. While prying it, I am seeing that it's starting to loosen up at the edges a bit, so I'm just going to give it a little bit more time to soak in. While that's happening, I'm going to remove these straps as well as remove these exhauster valves. While I'm busy with the water, I think I may as well add some water around these braces over here, because I'm going to need to get them off as well. Starting to give slightly. Let me add some more water inside this gap that's opening up here. That gave me a fright. Well, that's about as near as perfect a removal as I'm going to get. All in all, both surfaces are fairly clean. With a bit of sanding and treatment, I think they're going to look great. On to the next step. Okay, I'm going to quickly attempt to explain to you how these bellows work, well, as far as I understand it. Now bear in mind these bellows are upside down now, so the gaps where the air comes out underneath the reed pan are at the bottom now. So these front two parts over here are what are called the exhausters. The straps that were over here, which I have closed now, are the exhauster valves. These two are separated by this panel in the middle, and this chamber at the back here is called the reservoir. So what happens is the two springs that are on the side here keep this reservoir expanded. So as you start pumping on the bellows, what actually happens is it creates suction in the reservoir chamber and sucks it in. As soon as you stop pumping, the springs will obviously slowly expand the reservoir again. Another interesting thing on the back, this valve at the back here is a safety valve to prevent overcompression of the reservoir. I've already taken this valve off, but as you can see here, I'll zoom in a bit, there is a nail protruding from this center panel. So what happens is if the reservoir is overcompressed, that nail will push against this valve, sucking air into it so that it can release some of the vacuum. This is obviously, as I mentioned, just to prevent overcompression and damaging the bellows. So I'm not an expert at how bellows work, but from the little bit of research that I've done and the logic that I've gained from taking them out and having a look at them, that is the best explanation I've got. The cloth on the reservoir seems to be fairly airtight, but all of these exhausters, as you can see by this one, have got holes in the corners. All of the material is fairly perished, so I'm going to be replacing that anyway. To replace that, I'm going to be using this, and this, I might add, is not actual bellows cloth, but this is the closest I could find. Seems to be very similar to the bellows cloth. Now from what I understand is bellows cloth is just a normal strong material infused or coated with rubber on the other side. Now this one is similar, but instead of rubber on the other side, this is synthetic leather, and I'm hoping that this is going to do the job. If you happen to be doing a restoration yourself and you have access to it, I would recommend getting proper bellows cloth, because obviously that is just going to extend the life of your bellows. This organ is most probably not going to be something that I'm going to play every day, and as I've mentioned before, it's probably just going to be something that's going to stay in my family. So hopefully one day, if one of my grandkids decide to restore this organ again, hopefully they will have access to proper bellows cloth. I also got this. This is what I'm going to be using as the new straps for the treadles. It's not exactly the same thing as well, but I think it should do the job. I got this army green one, which I thought looked cool. I'll probably not use that, but it was cheap enough that I bought it anyway. I might be able to use this for something else. This is velvet, which I'm going to be using as a backer for the treadles. At the moment there is a red velvet in there, but I thought this gold velvet would look kind of nice. But before I can do any of these things, I first got to get started on taking apart the rest of these bellows, which means taking off this bellows cloth. But before I do that, I'm going to extend all of the chambers. I'm going to measure their maximum opening size, and I'll probably write it down on the top corner somewhere, along with naming each one of these. So let's get started with that. Okay, I think I'm going to try the water again. I'm going to take some warm water and then I'm going to brush it all over where the bellows cloth is glued on, because as far as I can, I want to try and remove each of the bellows cloths in one piece. Perhaps that'll help me make up some kind of template for the bellows that need to go back in here. So let's do that. Okay, so while I'm heating up some water, I'm going to remove these strips of wood. It doesn't look like they are glued on at all. They're just held on by nails, so should be able to knock them out fairly easily. Okay, while that water is soaking in, there are a couple of things I want to do here. Firstly, I would like to remove these treadles. I'm going to remove these rollers as well, and there are a couple of repairs that I'd like to do. As you can see, this piece of wood is broken off. It's only been held in by a nail on that side. Once I've taken this off, I'm going to glue that on with normal wood glue, clamp it down so it's nice and strong. There's another piece of wood that was chipped out over here. I'm just going to find that piece. I've got it stored here somewhere, and I'm going to glue that in place as well. So let's do it. Okay, let's see if this is going to come off any easier now. Okay, I was on the fence about whether or not I should replace these hinges, mainly because I'm a little worried about what I'm going to replace them with. After some thought, I've decided that I think leather would be a good material for the hinges. I don't know if you can see this, but this one has got this white kind of cloth or strapping used as a hinge here. It's glued onto the bottom side of this panel, and then onto the top of this panel, and then what they've done is glued a piece of Bellows cloth over the top. These ones over here, don't know if you can see that, is like a orange brownish kind of material. We put some water on here so that I can take these off, and same on those. It looks like these exhausters have got a double hinge similar to what I did on the swells in the lower action. It's got a piece of material glued on the back side and then also on the inside as well. Here you can see the ones on the inside. I'm going to add some water to those as well so that they can soften a bit. Okay, so most of these parts still have quite a bit of dry glue left all over them. Instead of trying to sand it off, I'm going to take hot water, which is about to boil there, and then I'm going to put that on here and scrape away as much of it as I can before I start sanding. Okay guys, I'm going to move on to sanding all the rest of the parts, but I'm going to do that off camera because that's going to be terribly boring for you guys to watch. But before I do that, there's a problem that I noticed with these exhauster panels, something that you may have already picked up while watching me disassemble it. I noticed that both of them have got quite a considerable warp in here. Now this is where the bellows strap is attached, so it might be from the pressure of pulling it the whole time. So worst case scenario is I'm going to have to remake these panels, but before I do that, I'm just going to try something. I'm going to take quite a bit of water and wet both of these panels. Then I'm going to lay them on top of each other and clamp them down as tight as I can, and I'm going to leave them for a day or two so that they can dry nicely, and see if by any chance that will reduce the curves in these boards. So let me give that a shot. Okay guys, this is the moment of truth. We're going to take these clamps off and see if this curve has been removed. I will mention that yesterday afternoon I took these clamps off and I got a really nasty surprise. You may recall that when I clamped these up, I had the bow of the wood on the outside. I left them outside in the sun to dry, and obviously throughout the day the outside dried a lot more than what the inside dried, because these are obviously two pieces of wood clamped together. What happened is when I took the clamps off, it had just reversed the curve, because obviously it was totally dry on the outside and wet on the inside, so it curved up in the direction of the dried wood. What I did is I just turned them around again and put the dry sides on the inside and the still fairly damp side on the outside, clamped them up again, and I left them overnight. So we're about to see if that worked. Well, I have to say I'm pleasantly surprised. There is still a tiny bit of curve in the wood. I will say it definitely looks a whole lot better than what it did. So I think I might be able to get these to work. I'm just going to give it another light sanding. Wetting it has obviously raised the grain, and we should be done. Alright guys, this video is already pushing over 20 minutes, so I'm going to cut it short there. That is the disassembly and cleaning of the entire bellows. So in the next part I will start the hair-raising task of cutting out a new bellows cloth, fitting them, fitting all the new valves, putting this thing together and getting it to function like a proper set of bellows again. So just a side note, I've been getting a couple of comments on some of my latest videos from people who are just getting their hands on or acquiring old organs like this, and the feedback seems to be very positive. Just like all of them, when I started this project, obviously the first place I turned to was YouTube, and quite simply there just isn't a full complete restoration series on YouTube regarding old reed organs, and that is definitely one of the main reasons why I decided to do this series. You know, I'm not passing myself off as an expert on reed organs. I do mention that almost every chance I get. When I first got this reed organ, I didn't even know what a reed organ was. So every step of the way is a journey of learning for me. I'm really happy that there are people out there that are finding what I'm doing helpful. Even though I'm not as clued up on organs as many other people out there, just the process of seeing me take it apart, figure out how all these parts work, is very helpful to someone who's never seen the inside of an organ before. So as it stands, this series that I'm busy with could very well be the very first complete reed organ restoration on YouTube. Even if it doesn't turn out as amazing as I hope it will, at least that's got to count for something. So with all that being said, I would once again like to thank everyone who has watched this video. everyone who has been following this series, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and share it with any of your friends who you think might benefit from it. And as always, till next time, keep making stuff.